Hi guys, my name's Donovan. I work at the Deckle Edge. I also shop here, way too much. And this weekend I was at the Comicon, and I've been asked to talk about one of the masks that I made. And so pretty much with the exception of the fur, which I got at a fabric store, all of the stuff that you see on the table here is what I used on the mask. So starting off with the base structure, I pretty much used craft foam. That we sell here in A3 and I think A4 sheets in a couple of packs, made by Dala. And that you can heat shape, you can stitch into it, you can hot glue it, which is also what I use tons of. I don't always recommend hot gluing, but in this case, sometimes you need to use the hot glue just to melt them together quickly. And quite a handy thing to have. You can also use, if you have a little bit more time to glue your stuff, I would also recommend this glue, because this I've glued a whole lot of different stuff together. Works like a contact, the Dollar Styrofoam glue. So you pretty much put it on side A and side B of what you're gluing, leave it for 2 to 5 minutes, and then once that's done, you stick them together like a contact adhesive and it'll bond. And keep it there for a couple of minutes until it's nice and welded. And so this you can pretty much glue all the stuff you see here. You can glue this to that. The other goodies that I used for the base structure of the mask underneath the foam was pretty much the Dala Clever Clay. It's similar to another cosplay thing that I used to use. It was called I think foam clay, and very nice thing to use. You can shape it into any shape you want. It's also very similar to crazy clay. It's just nicer to work with. And I didn't even bother gluing this onto the surface. It literally just, I stuck it onto the foam and it held. Also, if you're gentle with it, you can sort of stitch through it as well, which is pretty much what I did with the fur here. And I just gave it a very light stitching over the mouth and over the nose area. And that's also what the nose is made out of. And you give that about a couple of hours. I left mine for about 6 hours to dry, and then afterwards I painted it with normal acrylic paints. You can use craft paint. I like using acrylic just because I don't have to varnish it afterwards. Now for the inside, like with the eyes here, we have this little sort of like selection of very basic sort of what is this? Silicone molds. I had to think of the name there. So we've got these silicone molds where you can use the 1-to-1 resin. You mix them 50-50, so you just make sure whatever you mix, and you need a small amount at first. I used about 1/10 of this to do one sort of batch where I had enough resin to fill the entire thing. So I just decided I was going to turn the whole thing into cabochons. I pretty much used one of the medium-sized ones, and you obviously have to double that up. Now this took a while to cure, especially now with the humid weather. But then what you can do, sometimes it makes bubbles while you're mixing the resin together. You just follow the instructions on the packet as is, you'll be fine. But then when it makes a couple of air bubbles, you can usually tap the resin mold. And if you have access to a heat gun, that is actually preferable, because the heat, you just hit it lightly with the heat sort of at arm's length, just to make the bubbles in the resin rise. That I left overnight to cure. Full cure I think takes about a week or so. They do mention on the packet there. But mine was pretty much ready to handle within a couple of hours. And as long as you mix the resin and the hardener in equal parts, it'll set to a nice hard finish. And then afterwards I just painted the back with the FW Pearl inks, the acrylic inks. You can use acrylic paints if you want to as well. I just like using the inks because they're nice and shiny. And then what I used to mount the eye, I don't know if you can see there on the inside, there's like a gauze thing, which is this stuff over here.
How did you get the 3 colors?
3 colors? Oh, you know the eyes?
Yeah.
There was 3 different types of acrylic ink that I used of the FW. So I just got one here as an example. And then pretty much on the inside, it's looking a bit rough because I really needed to get this thing done. So it doesn't look pretty on the inside. But this gauze, this is the plastic one, don't use the metal one. That is the softest one to use. Now you can cover it up with, later on I'll cover this up with fabric just to make sure that's nice and set in there. And then what I used to mount the eye, to glue that, I didn't want to use glue because I wasn't sure how it was going to affect the resin. So I literally used an acrylic gel, and this is pretty much the one I preferred working with. You can use any other gel as long as it's nice and thick. I had the golden at hand, and it's nice and thick compared to some of the other brands. So this is what I used, and I left that also for a good couple of hours to set. If you get about 6 hours, it'll set nicely. And yeah, so that was pretty much what I used for that. And in the fur, to color the fur, I wanted it nice and soft. I didn't want to use fabric paints on it because it's a synthetic that doesn't always stick so well. And this was going to be on my head the whole day at the convention. So what I did to color this, I pretty much used a mix of alcohol markers. So Copics, the Primart one, and I think this was the Mart one. I had 3 different types. These are some of the colors that I used. And then I just kept on layering it. And yeah, so that's pretty much that. And that keeps the fabric nice and soft. I would recommend working with gloves because the alcohol does spread a bit. So you don't want your fingers full and then potentially touching another area of the mask. And that sets pretty much as soon as you put it down. And then obviously some of the extras that I use besides these guys over here, the sculpting tools to get the shape underneath of the sort of like the brow area and the cheek area, all of this that contained the clay. I cannot do without these. These things, I always have to have some of these tools for any sculpting job that I do. And then lastly, for the sewing, good old-fashioned leather sewing needles, because it goes through the foam, because the layers of fabric and foam that I put inside were quite thick. So normal needles are too thin and too fragile. So yeah, I like using the leather needles because they're nice and sharp. There's one with sort of a diamond shape that's one of my favorites to use for most of these things because they don't really damage anything and they go straight through. And yeah, then thread, we do have some of the thread here. I used a couple of different types. This is also one that was nice and handy and cheap. And then also to save your fingers with set needle thimbles. And that is it in a very compressed nutshell. So, okay, and the other thing, normally I would recommend like this one. I usually have a beanie on, so it's going to sit funny on my head.